The riverside village of Obanaku, tucked along the quiet bends of the Cross River, woke each morning to mist and birdsong. Canoes kissed the shore softly, palm trees swayed like patient elders, and smoke usually curled from cooking fires as women prepared yam porridge and pepper soup. Yet in the middle of this familiar rhythm lived Eliza Hart, a young woman whose habits unsettled the village. While others boiled, roasted, and fried, Eliza ate only raw yams, fresh fruits, and uncooked roots. She chewed slowly, calmly, as if listening to something no one else could hear. Children mocked her, women whispered, and men shook their heads, calling her stubborn or cursed. Eliza was not loud. She fetched water like everyone else, greeted elders with respect, and smiled easily, but when offered cooked food, she always refused, politely, firmly. "Fire is not for me," she would say, her voice steady. No one understood what she meant. Her mother, Margaret Hart, had died years earlier, taking her secrets to the grave. Her father, Thomas Hart, avoided questions, his eyes clouded with a fear he never explained. At night, when cooking fires died and the village slept, Eliza often sat by the river, eating raw fruit beneath the moon, whispering prayers older than Obanaku itself. The elders watched her closely. In Obanaku, nothing strange existed without reason. And though life flowed peacefully for now, the river carried rumors from upstream, of dry lands, empty forests, and villages where firewood had vanished like smoke in the wind. Eliza felt it before anyone else. One evening, as she bit into a raw yam and stared at the darkening water, she whispered, "It has begun." The river answered with silence. The change did not announce itself with thunder or warning drums. It crept in quietly, like a thief at dawn. One morning, the women of Obanaku returned from the forest with half-emptied bundles of firewood. By the next market day, the forest paths led only to bare stumps and brittle branches that snapped in the hand. Even the fallen trees near the riverbank had dried into useless husks. Cooking fires burned low, and smoke thinned into nothing. At first, the villagers blamed overuse and promised to search farther inland. But each journey returned the same answer: the forest had closed its hands. As the days stretched on, hunger settled into the village like an unwanted guest. Yams remained in barns, fish still swam in the river, yet without fire, meals became smaller and weaker. Children cried at night. Elders chewed cola nuts in silence. The hearths, once the heart of every compound, lay cold and gray. Through it all, Eliza Hart remained unchanged. She rose each morning, peeled raw yams by the river, and shared fruits with those too weak to walk. Some villagers began to watch her with suspicion. Others watched with hope. Whispers followed her through the narrow paths. "She eats and does not suffer," one woman muttered. "Perhaps she caused this," said another. Thomas Hart felt the weight of their stares and avoided the village square. Eliza, however, felt no anger. Only a deep sadness, and a growing heaviness in her chest. At night, her dreams filled with images of burning forests turning to ash, and a woman's voice, her mother's, calling her name from beneath the river. When the first child collapsed from hunger, the elders could no longer wait. The council drum was struck at sunset, summoning all households. Eliza washed her hands in the river before answering the call. As she walked toward the square, she knew the time for silence was ending. The covenant was no longer hers alone to carry. The village square filled slowly, faces drawn and restless under the fading evening light. The great Iroko tree stood at the center, its roots twisting like listening ears beneath the soil. Mats were laid for the elders, and the council drum rested beside them, silent now but heavy with authority. Chief Raymond Okone, oldest among them, cleared his throat and let his gaze travel across the crowd. Hunger had sharpened every face. Fear sat where laughter once lived. One by one, the elders spoke of what had been lost: firewood, strength, certainty. Then Chief Raymond's eyes settled on Eliza Hart. A murmur rippled through the gathering. She stepped forward calmly, her wrapper tied neatly, her hands steady. An elder accused her of defying tradition by refusing cooked food. Another questioned how she alone seemed untouched by weakness. Eliza listened without interruption, her eyes lowered in respect. When the elders finally fell silent, all attention turned to Thomas Hart, summoned from the edge of the crowd. Thomas's shoulders sagged as he knelt before the council. His voice trembled as he spoke of Margaret, Eliza's mother, and the night Eliza was born during a violent storm. He confessed that before dawn, Margaret had been taken to the shrine of Eudaimoni, the river spirit, where a covenant was sealed. Before the village could protest, the chief raised his staff. The name of Eudaimoni was not spoken lightly. At the chief's command, the eldest priestess was called. Her eyes, white with age but sharp with memory, confirmed the truth. Eliza was bound to a promise made before her first breath, to live without fire so the village might one day live at all. The crowd fell into stunned silence. Outside the square, the river surged loudly, as if agreeing. Eliza lifted her head then, meeting their eyes for the first time, and said softly, "The famine is the question. The covenant is the answer." Silence clung to the village square long after Eliza's words settled into the air. No one spoke. Even the river, usually restless at dusk, seemed to slow its movement, as though listening. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, burdened by the truth they had unearthed. A covenant made before a child's first cry was not easily broken, or ignored. Chief Raymond Okun rose slowly, leaning on his staff, and announced that the matter would not end in the square. The spirits had been named. They would be consulted. That night, Obanica slept uneasily. Without cooking fires, darkness pressed closer than ever before. In her father's compound, Eliza sat alone, peeling a raw yam by moonlight. Thomas Hart watched her from the doorway, regret heavy in his chest. He had protected her silence for years, believing secrecy would spare her pain. Now, the burden had become public, and there was no shelter left to offer. Eliza sensed his worry but felt something stronger within herself: acceptance. The covenant had always lived in her bones, the famine had only awakened it. Before dawn, the elders and priestess prepared for a journey to the shrine of Eudaimoni, deep where the river narrowed and the forest thickened. Eliza was asked to remain behind, but she refused gently. "What concerns my breath concerns my feet," she said. Her calm left no room for argument. By first light, the procession moved out, carrying kola nuts, white cloth, and a goat without blemish. Villagers watched them disappear into the trees, hope and fear braided together. As they walked, the air grew cool and heavy. Birds fell silent. Eliza felt a pull in her chest, as though an unseen hand guided her steps. She knew the covenant was about to be tested, not just by hunger, but by choice. Somewhere ahead, the river waited to answer whether Obanica would endure, or be reclaimed by the earth that first gave it life. The shrine of Eudaimoni revealed itself at the bend where the river narrowed and the forest pressed close, ancient and watchful. Stones arranged in a half-circle rose from the earth, darkened by time and offerings long forgotten by many but never by the spirits. The air was cool, carrying the scent of wet soil and leaves. As the elders stepped forward, the priestess instructed everyone to remove their sandals. Eliza's bare feet touched the ground, and a shiver passed through her, not of fear, but recognition. The goat was presented, kola nuts laid carefully upon white cloth, and prayers spoken in low, reverent tones. The river stirred, its surface rippling though no wind blew. The priestess called upon Eudaimoni, recounting the covenant made years ago, a child spared from fire so a village might one day be spared from death. When she finished, the forest answered with a deep, resonant silence. Then Eliza felt it, a tightening in her chest, sharp and sudden. She dropped to her knees, breast shallow, as if something unseen pressed against her spirit. A voice rose from the river, neither loud nor soft, but heavy with age. It spoke of balance, of promises kept and forgotten. The famine was not punishment, the voice said, but a reminder. Fire had been taken from the forest because the village would soon depend on what had never touched flame. Eliza was to lead them through this crossing, not as a sacrifice, but as a guide. The covenant demanded obedience, not blood. When the presence withdrew, the forest seemed to breathe again. Eliza remained kneeling, tears sliding silently down her face. Chief Raymond bowed his head deeply. The meaning was clear: Obaniku must learn to survive without fire, following the path Eliza had walked all her life. The elders turned back toward the village carrying not relief, but responsibility. Behind them, the river flowed steadily, as if time itself had agreed to wait. The return to Obaniku did not bring celebration, only quiet resolve. When the elders gathered the villagers and shared the words of Eudaimoni, disbelief rippled through the crowd. Living without fire was unthinkable. Fire had shaped their meals, their stories, their sense of home. Yet hunger had already stripped comfort from their lives, leaving them little room to argue with the spirits. Chief Raymond Okun declared that the covenant would be honored. From that day, the village would follow Eliza's way, at least until the land spoke again. Under Eliza's guidance, new rhythms began to form. She showed them how to soak yams until they softened, how to dry fish under the sun, how to blend fruits and roots into nourishing pastes. What once seemed strange became necessary. Children who had mocked her now sat beside her, learning patiently. Strength returned slowly, not as fullness, but as endurance. The river provided generously, and the forest, though still quiet, no longer felt hostile. Eliza carried the weight of every watching eye. Some villagers treated her with reverence, others with barely hidden resentment. She accepted both without complaint. At night, she returned to the river, listening for the voice that had guided her since birth. It did not return, but she felt its presence in the steady flow of water and the renewed color of the villagers' faces. Thomas Hart, seeing her lead with calm authority, finally understood the depth of what his wife had protected. Weeks passed. Though firewood remained absent, despair no longer ruled Obaniku. The people adapted, their bodies learning a different kind of survival. Then one morning, as Eliza knelt by the river, she noticed something new, a faint scent of smoke carried by the breeze from far upstream. Her heart tightened. The crossing was not yet over. Change was coming again, and this time, it would demand more than endurance. It would demand choice. The scent of smoke upstream grew stronger with each passing day, curling into the village like an unwelcome visitor. Panic stirred among the people of Obaniku, who feared the return of fire would undo the balance they had struggled to maintain. Eliza stood at the edge of the river, staring at the distant plume, feeling the weight of generations in her chest. She understood that the covenant had not ended with survival alone, it demanded vigilance, wisdom, and courage. She had been the guardian, but now the choice would extend to the entire village. That evening, the elders convened another council beneath the irako tree, the river whispering in the background. Chief Raymond spoke with measured urgency, telling the villagers that the smoke was a test, not a punishment. The people must decide whether to maintain the covenant or return to fire, risking the wrath of Eudaimoni. Murmurs of fear and doubt filled the square. Yet when Eliza stepped forward, her calm presence silenced the crowd. She explained that fire was not the enemy, but misuse of it could destroy life as they knew it. The villagers listened, realizing the truth of her lifelong devotion. The next morning, the community gathered along the riverbank. Following Eliza's guidance, they carefully used the fire only where necessary, cooking in small, controlled flames while leaving much of their sustenance raw. The smoke dissipated harmlessly into the sky, and the river flowed without obstruction. Elders, children, and young adults alike tasted the balance between caution and survival. Strength returned fully, but now tempered with wisdom. Eliza knelt by the river as the sun rose, her bare feet touching the cool water. She whispered a silent prayer of thanks to Eudaimoni and to her mother, Margaret, who had set the covenant in motion. The village of Obaniku thrived, not because fire had returned, but because they had learned to respect life, the river, and the promises made before birth. In that balance, they found not only survival, but harmony, an inheritance that would carry through generations, as enduring as the river itself.